Hello and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Jason Russell, a city planner for the City of Lakewood and a friend of the City Club. I'm glad to be here today and moderating our conversation, connecting with the corridor. I doubt anyone in the room is unfamiliar with the Opportunity Corridor project, but let me take a few moments to lay out a few facts about the project. The corridor is a planned 3-mile boulevard extending from the southern end of University Circle at East 105th Street, traveling west and joins our interstate highway system at East 55th and I-490. The project is estimated to cost more than $300 million and is being led by the Ohio Department of Transportation. All the funds for this project have already been allocated. Now, the neighborhoods that the corridor travel to are some of the poorest in our city, our state, and in our region. State Representative Sandra Williams recently told the Northeast Ohio Media Group that the average annual income of these neighborhoods is just $10,000. Additionally, more than 60 residents will be relocated because of the course of this project. Now, this project has been discussed for years. Indeed, some see this as a completion of the highway system that was first envisioned in the mid-20th century. And it's worth noting that this project has brought out stark philosophical differences about urban planning among different constituent communities with different constituencies in our community. Now, phase 1 construction has already begun on East 105th Street, and because of this, we're focusing our conversation today on the design and execution of the project. Specifically, how do we ensure that the project meets not only its stated transportation goals, but goals stated around sustainability, neighborhood and economic development, and economic inclusion. Now, today we're here from 3 leaders of the project. We have ODOT's District 12 Deputy Director, Myron S, City of Cleveland's Director of Planning, Freddy Collier, and the Opportunity Corridor Project Director, Kittredge. The 3 of them will be offering a brief presentation to help us understand the progress thus far and how citizen input can help inform the ultimate project execution. Now, because this is a contentious project, we've also invited 3 community thought leaders who have been critical on various aspects of the project. We'll have them come up and speak right before the beginning of our question and answer period that will follow our presentations. Now, this is an open-ended forum, so we actually expect this to extend longer than our traditional City Club event. All right, so we're going to get started. I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing from me. Before we get started, I'm not going to read all the bios because we have a lot to cover today, but we're going to start off with Myron, who's going to present ODOT's presentation for the Opportunity Corridor project. Myron?
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that introduction. Thank you all for being here today. We're really appreciative to be able to come out to the community and really talk about this very important project for our region. As Jason mentioned, we've been working on this for at least 10 to 15 years when it was originally conceived, and it's really it's evolved. I don't believe as an ODOT project, but it's a project that we work together on with the community, with the city, with everybody together. So it's really, we did everything together and worked hard on it, and we're glad to be here today to present where we're at for now. So with me I got Gary Benish. Gary is our project manager for Opportunity Corridor.
Okay, thank you, Myron. As Myron said, it's been 15 years. I had down 11 years, actually. And I've only been involved with the project for 2 years. But today, we've already broke ground and started construction on the section on East 105th Street by the Cleveland Clinic. Even though the project's been underway for that long, 10 of those years took just to get the environmental document approved. In fact, last year on May 1st, the Federal Highway Administration signed off on the environmental document, giving us the go-ahead for construction and for detailed design. And as a result of that, we started this first section. And we broke ground, just about a month ago, they already started the traffic control over by the Cleveland Clinic. The next section is going to be coming up very soon, toward the end of this year, from East 93rd Street, northeasterly to Quincy. That'll be what we call our Section 2 project, and that'll be the section of new roadway that's going to be built, because really 105th Street is just a reconstruction of the existing roadway. We're now projecting, based on the funding and all the scenarios available to us and looking at all the utility issues that we have, that we should complete the corridor somewhere around year 2020. The last section, Section 3, goes from East 55th Street to East 93rd, and that's a very big section, and we're still strategizing how we're going to deliver that section. There's a lot of utilities there, a lot of bridges that need to be built, a lot of railroad involvement. So it's going to take some time to get all that resolved. Today we're pleased to have with us Matt Wall from HNTB. HNTB has been the consultant for the Opportunity Corridor since its inception. And fortunately, Matt Wall has been on the project as project manager since the very beginning of the project, more so than I have. I've only been 2 years. Matt is going to give us a short presentation showing the detailed design of the Opportunity Corridor, some of the design details we have in there, and then afterwards we'll have Q&A. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Gary. I'm going to try to do about 11 years in 11 minutes, so we're going to fly real quick through here. But what we always start with is our purpose and need, and it's really the driving force behind the project and why we are looking to come forth with a project. So the purpose of this project is to improve the transportation infrastructure, access and mobility within a historically underserved, economically depressed area within the city of Cleveland. And to do that, we're going to improve the system linkage, improve mobility, and equally as important is to support the planned economic development, and Freddy Collier will be talking about that. So as we look at the road, and this again is a high-level overview, moving very quick, we're going to highlight a lot of the things that the corridor and the alignment of the road was designed to do. First of all, we always wanted to minimize impacts, churches, businesses, and residents as we traverse through the corridor. We also want to accommodate known expansions. We've had a lot of public involvement, a lot of coordination. We've learned a lot. So a few examples of those are Orlando Baking Company, their expansion plans, Maselli's Dairy, and the Ken Johnson Rec Center, just as a few examples. In addition to that, in conjunction with the project, there's been a lot of other coordination for other planned initiatives. So we want to make sure we're accommodating that. And there was the City of Cleveland underwent a EPA brownfield area-wide study, and Fairfax neighborhood also has a new economy neighborhood. So as we look at the road, it was mentioned as some people view it as an extension of the freeway system. As we've always stated, it is not a freeway. It is an at-grade boulevard. So it has traffic lights at intersections, vehicle lanes, sidewalks, bike facilities, grass median, tree lawns, street trees, and lighting. Underground, the roadway is also making accommodations for underground power distribution systems, storm sewers, sanitary sewers, and water lines, all the things that will be necessary to support the redevelopment. So a recent change, there's been a lot of talk about on that bike facility. The project started with bike lanes. It eventually shifted to an off-street, share-the-use, multi-purpose trail, and then it's been refined within the last month to be a segregated bike and pedestrian path where there will be separate from the roadway and still remaining separate for safety. There will be 2 bike lanes on the south side of the road adjacent to a sidewalk. So pedestrians and bicycles don't share the same facility, but they're now adjacent. This is a rough look at the alignment of the road, starting at the left. At the bottom is where 490 intersects with East 55th Street. The project traverses in a northeasterly direction, as mentioned, until you hit 105th Street in Quincy, and then it reconstructs and improves 105th Street all the way up to just north of Chester. There are 13 traffic signals that provide access into the neighborhoods, and there are 8 bridges. So when you hear bridges, you think, oh, it's all elevated, it's grade separated. That is not the case. 6 of those bridges are actually where the road crosses railroads. So a lot of it is separating the railroads from the cars and the bikes. At the west end of the project is the only place where there are roadway separations, and that's at East 55th Street. So taking a look at East 55th Street will stay right at the same elevation it is today. Where I-490 comes in, it will be lowered. It'll be converted from what looks like a freeway into a boulevard, so we'll introduce the medians and the trees. It'll go underneath East 55th Street, and then there will be an access roadway, a traffic signal and access roadway providing access back to East 55th Street. This is because at the west end of the project is where we have the very high traffic volumes, all the traffic coming off of 490 at 55th Street, and in order to safely accommodate that traffic as well as pedestrian crossings going to the train station, we grade separated this location. There's also there's a pedestrian bridge right in this vicinity as well, and again, providing direct access to the train station. So our primary constraints here, we're making sure we could accommodate RTA, not impact their substation or their new train station at 55th Street, while trying to minimize all the impacts in the St. Hyacinth neighborhood of Slavic Village. This is a view, a 3D rendering looking west now, as you'll see 490 depressing below 55th Street, and you'll see the access roadway that starts at 55th Street and wraps down, as well as the pedestrian bridge. So don't picture a pedestrian bridge that's elevated up in the sky going over. The pedestrian bridge is at neighborhood level and the roadway is actually below grade. Going east from there, you'll see our second set of bridges. That's about a 600-foot long bridge crossing of the Kingsbury Run Valley. It's about a 50-foot deep ravine. It presently prevents pedestrians, cyclists, or vehicles. It's a barrier that prevents movement through this area, so that a new bridge is constructed there. Signalized intersection at Kinsman Road. Kinsman gets widened from 4 lanes to 5 lanes to provide a left turn lane onto the boulevard. And then we proceed east with another pair of bridges over the RTA blue-green lines. That's another barrier that prevents pedestrians, cars, and bicyclists in the area today. Again, our desire here was to keep the road as close to the tracks as possible at this location to minimize impacts in the central neighborhood, the Kinsman neighborhood. When we move east from there, you'll see a new signalized intersection at East 75th Street, another one at East 79th Street. To the north, the big yellow building right there is Orlando Baking Company. The alignment of the road has been coordinated to facilitate a multi-phase expansion of their property, as well as accommodations for the brownfield redevelopment area south of the boulevard. East of 79th Street, we have another structure. This time we have a railroad bridge that will go over top of the boulevard. We have to build a road under a train line that accommodates about 80 trains a day. So we have 3 different phases of train maintenance in order to maintain train traffic at the whole time building a new bridge. Another one of those driving expenses of the project. At this location, just east of Norfolk Southern's tracks, is the location of Maselli's Dairy. They're presently located here and have expanded here, but have additional expansion plans that'll push westward, but the alignment of the roadway was coordinated to accommodate Maselli's. We create a new signalized intersection at Buckeye Road and another one at Woodland Avenue. Again, looking to minimize residential church impacts through the corridor. When we started our study area and we looked at the project, there were 27 churches within the study area. In the end, we've been able to avoid all but one small storefront church that required a relocation. But what you'll see here, a lot of coordination went on at Woodland Avenue. We had options that created some discontinuity of Woodland, but that was opposed by the public, so we came up with an alignment that both keeps Woodland continuous as well as accommodates a rather large expansion of the Ken Johnson Rec Center. East from there, we create a new signalized intersection at East 93rd Street, which provides access. You'll see the big white building to the north. That's the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Justice Center. Through there, we go east from there, avoiding impacts to forged products and also accommodating more of the brownfield redevelopment areas. As we hit the 105th Street corridor, and I've shifted north on you, north is now going to the right. So this is 105th Street you see in the middle of the road. You have railroads up top and railroads down below and a roadway that has to fit in between them. A lot of coordination, very constrained area, but we're able to maintain Quincy with its continuous through movement and with the new boulevard coming through. So we're avoiding the impacts to the street grid through there, while also accommodating the redevelopment of a large tract in the Fairfax neighborhood known as the New Economy neighborhood. Uh-oh. Okay. Moving north from there, again, this is along the 105th Street corridor. We do widen the corridor. If you drive 105th Street now, it's anywhere from 2 lanes to 5 lanes wide. When it's done, it'll be generally 5 lanes wide with one small stretch that ends up with 6 lanes. Again, we're avoiding all the medical buildings through here. We're avoiding impacts to the RTA investment at Euclid Avenue. And then when we get to Chester and 105th, you enter the Wade Park Historic District, and that's everything kind of shaded in the orange color. So the alignment shifts there, and we widen away from there to minimize impacts. So looking at some of the other design features of the roadway, there are a lot of enhancements, improvements that have gone into the roadway. Again, this is still up at 105th and Chester, and what you'll see here is at various intersections along the corridor, we're going to be creating small public plazas. These are opportunities for street furniture and other amenities. Some examples of what will go into those public plazas are the furniture, the pavers, landscaping, public art, and opportunities for neighborhood identity. Looking at the medians and along the edges of the road, using some amenity strips. These are the areas where the salt tends to want to kill the grass, so we can pretty those up with some amenity strips and some landscaping. The corridor will use high efficiency lighting, LED light fixtures, spaced about every 150 feet along the road. These are very compact, very visually pleasing light fixtures, also with underground power circuitry feeding everything, so you won't have all the overhead wiring. And then on the poles, it creates more opportunity for neighborhood and other identities through banners on poles. The light poles, in conjunction with that, all the street planting for the corridor is all coordinated. You know, everything will be new. So we're looking at a very dense tree planting program within the medians and the tree lawns. We're selecting trees through the coordination with the steering committee. The desire was to kind of reduce the greenhouse impact and plant trees that will end up with a mature canopy when they grow. Also looking at hardy and salt-tolerant species, coordinate everything with the light poles, and then using a variety of species so the next time some disease comes through or something, it doesn't wipe out the whole corridor. These are just some examples of the types of trees and the species that would be planted along the corridor. And we're working with RTA. The project will fund the construction of enhanced bus shelters at locations desired by RTA. And then we're looking at enhancements of the bridges. Again, creating aesthetically pleasing structures. This one shows a pylon on the corner with more opportunity for neighborhood identity, as well as some custom railings and some LED light fixtures for amenities. And that's my presentation. With that, I will be turning it over to Freddy for the next, or you introduction. Sorry about that. Thank you. Oh, okay.
So next up, we'll have the City of Cleveland's Planning Director, Freddy Collier, give the city's presentation on the Opportunity Corridor.
All right, get my technology right here. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to come at you from a slightly different angle and really talk to you about the City of Cleveland's involvement in this project from its inception. As indicated, my name is Freddy Collier. I've been the City Planning Director in the City of Cleveland for a year. However, I've been with the City of Cleveland for 15 years and a lifelong resident of the City of Cleveland. Grew up in the Buckeye neighborhood of the City of Cleveland. So often when individuals talk about various projects and they come from different positions, you know, people tend to disassociate them from the actual community. However, I'm a Cleveland resident, born and bred, and what goes on in these neighborhoods matters a great deal to me personally. I want to talk to you a little bit about our involvement in this project and what it means for the City of Cleveland and what has to happen in order for it to matter. One of the things that we always talk about at the city, and Mayor Jackson has been very focused on, is the issue of equity. And equity is really about ensuring that we provide the supports for individuals who are inherently disadvantaged, those little people who can't see the game. So how do we provide those supports? And part of providing those supports as it relates to the Opportunity Corridor is really providing community and economic development. So part of my discussion is going to go beyond the roadway. I want to share with you the original vision statement that the City of Cleveland had been involved with crafting in partnership with ODOT, GCP, and others, because for us, this really harkens back to what our core value proposition was when we talk about this section of town and talk about the Opportunity Corridor. The Opportunity Corridor will act as a catalyst for economic development in the city of Cleveland, create vital connections to the greater region, and support revitalization efforts in the surrounding established neighborhoods. The well-designed multimodal public infrastructure will leverage private investment and infuse the corridor area with new jobs for existing and future residents. The success of the Opportunity Corridor will result from an inclusive planning process that involves the community and results in development initiatives that promote sustainable land uses and healthy communities. And part of what I want to demonstrate to you today is how we are living out or trying to advance every aspect of that vision statement. So when we think about this corridor, we understand that there's a dichotomy out there, sort of a tale of two cities, for lack of a better word. When we think about the assets that exist in Greater University Circle, and we think about some of the distressed neighborhoods that flank this potential investment, for us it's really about how do you begin to improve quality of life while at the same time building on those strengths. And what exactly does that mean? When we talk about capitalizing on strengths like University Circle, we're talking about connecting to technology, education, culture, arts, the medical industry, as well as leveraging land resources. But when we talk about improving the quality of life, which is really very important for us as the city of Cleveland, it's about restoring value to community and really creating environments where people can work, play, shop, worship, learn, and live in a safe, aesthetically pleasing, and well-connected environment. So this image, many in here may be familiar with. When we first saw this image, this image was a woman who actually lives in the Opportunity Corridor area. And when you first see this image, you think that this is sort of rural Alabama somewhere. But this is actually a section of Opportunity Corridor. So in the Opportunity Corridor area. So the question for us is really how do we begin to infuse the types of uses that really gives this woman and others in the community opportunity to thrive. The first thing that is very important to understand about this corridor is the fact that we're trying to create common connections among communities. And when you look at this map, you can see the various neighborhoods that flank this corridor. Some neighborhoods are challenged in many ways, but the land resources that flank this corridor are really critical for the success of the corridor development and restoring value into neighborhoods. So the Opportunity Corridor will act as a catalyst for economic development in the city of Cleveland and create vital connections to the greater region. This map is an example of the Connecting Cleveland 2020 citywide plan. And at the time when we produced this map, this showed all the existing land uses in the city. Our desire was really to begin to focus on how do we create job opportunities, higher density development, and create the type of walkable neighborhoods that many people want to see in the 21st century. But when you look at this map, one of the impediments to that vision is what you see in the gray, which is a large agglomeration of a vacant land. And when you look here in this area, formerly known as the Forgotten Triangle, it hosts most of, if not a great deal of the vacant land in the city of Cleveland. So how do we capitalize on that? Okay. There we go. Oh.
Trigger F5.
I'll just stay safe. So when we think about the city of Cleveland, we think about development throughout the city of Cleveland. One of the things that we really focus on is what we call the regeneration strategy. And when you look at the city of Cleveland and you understand where investment is happening, this is sort of the sort of image that you get. These areas that are outlined in the dark red represents where many of the investment flags have been planted. Downtown, Euclid Corridor, University Circle, the Lakefront, the Cuyahoga River Valley Opportunity Corridor, and the regional asset that is our airport. But when you think about how Cleveland is going to really mature and come back, it's really about how do we begin to build off those investments. And for those of you who know Cleveland very well, which most people in this room actually do, the fact is that many of these investment areas are flanked by some of our most challenged communities in the city. And this is part of where we need to spend a lot of attention and really spend a lot of our time. At least from a city perspective, this is how we see it. One of the things that Mayor Jackson has done, and he's continuing to do, is really try to increase opportunities for international, regional, and local businesses through our Department of Economic Development. And the fact that we are not only trying to identify international, regional, and local business, understanding that if, in fact, or when these businesses are landed, they need a place to locate. These vacant parcels offer some opportunity for that potential. Also, the Opportunity Corridor, we want to see that it supports revitalization efforts in the surrounding established neighborhoods. These are some of the key investments that are happening within the corridor area. Many of them are existing today, and there are also many capital improvement investments that are happening in and around the corridor area. And how do we begin to build off of those investments that are happening? Expanding local businesses such as Orlando Banking Company, supporting neighborhood retail investment, leveraging the housing that exists, the new Heritage View homes, and also focusing on leveraging employees that actually work within the body of the corridor area. One of the things that we're doing in order to really drive decision-making is really looking at community voice as a critical part of this. And what you see here is a map that shows a series of neighborhood plans knitted together on one map. This map actually helps to inform our land use strategy. And part of what we do is really take that land use strategy and start to formulate our land use plan. So I want to just highlight a couple of areas when you start to break this up and we start to target certain zones within the Opportunity Corridor. This area outlined in red is really what we're focusing on as sort of the core job zone. East 79th Street corridor is going to be a very critical piece of the puzzle because that is one of the north-south corridors that connect to the corridor and actually link you to the actual neighborhoods that flank it. Also, the urban ag zone, really taking advantage of the opportunities that are associated with the innovation that's going on in that area. And also focusing on transit-oriented development opportunities around the rapid stations. One example is the Slavic Village TOD area, and really taking advantage of the New Economy neighborhood, which is just south of University Circle. So the idea is to create high-tech, low-tech, and no-tech opportunity when it comes to job creation. The well-designed multimodal public infrastructure will leverage private investment and infuse the corridor area with new jobs for existing and future residents. One of the goals of the city's comprehensive plan, Connecting Cleveland 2020, is to increase economic prosperity through job creation and improve access to jobs and business ownership by all segments of the community. It was alluded to earlier about our work with city architecture, the US EPA, regarding the Cleveland Brownfield area-wide plan, where we really begin to target areas within the corridor vicinity, particularly that core job zone area, for looking at where we can actually target land remediation efforts to create the type of job sites that could be leveraged as a result of the planning and development activity in this corridor. From a jobs perspective, just to kind of give you some positive trends that are happening citywide, there's been a 25% increase in STEM employment in Cleveland since 2003. This has helped raise per capita income by about 34%. So how can we create job opportunities that leverage that type of STEM education and employment? And also between 2011 and 2012 alone, there was an 11% increase in residents between the ages of 25 and 34 years old with at least a bachelor's degree, half of them who moved to the city of Cleveland from other states. So there's a brain gain in many cases, and if we can look at leveraging high-tech opportunities along this corridor, we can create a mix of employment opportunities for a diverse set of residents, but particularly those who live in the actual neighborhoods. Just to give you an example of some immediate things that are happening on the job front, the City of Cleveland workforce in the corridor area has really focused on job creation for existing residents today, even before the roadway is built. To date, there's been 91 total job placements from November 2014 through April 2015. And also connecting people to training opportunities, which is really critical, particularly for long-term opportunities. So 30 Opportunity Corridor residents have been approved for training in the following areas, consisting of trucking, manufacturing, welding, computerized numerical control machinists, as well as heavy equipment operators. These are all relevant skill sets that could yield benefit to individuals who take advantage of this opportunity now when we think about the potential prospect of new employment coming into the corridor. Also, the City of Cleveland is looking long-term and partnering with other local agencies to look at how do we begin to support stable and mature businesses, grow small business, and also support entrepreneurial startups, and really provide the wraparound services that these types of businesses need to mature. And many of these businesses exist in the larger community, and really determining how we can begin to create new business in this vicinity. Just to give you some statistical information from a sort of a place-based standpoint, this is educational attainment. And this map shows the percent of population 25 and over with at least a bachelor's degree or higher. And if you notice, the area in the light pink represents the lowest number. And you can see the purple line there where the Opportunity Corridor exists. The other thing you can look at is also employment. This is unemployment rate. For population 16 years or older, and the darker red represents a higher percentage of people who are unemployed. And if you look right there where that purple line is, that's in the Opportunity Corridor area, and you see a lot of red. The other aspect that you may notice in this particular map, family composition, where you see single mother households as a percent of all households. So you have a lot of single parent, low income residents in this vicinity represented by the dark red that's flanking that corridor, which makes the prospect for being deliberate about job creation and doing it at all levels that much more relevant. So the idea that we're trying to focus on at the city and working with our partners is the notion of viewing the development of people as a capital investment. If we can invest $331 million in a roadway and expect a long-term return, we can also invest in people and expect a return as well. So this has been a really key focus. And working with community colleges, local schools, and colleges and universities are going to be critical in that, and I'll expound on the community college connection. So to do this, we have to begin to create these education partnerships. Working with faith-based community, the business community, government, and basically all hands on deck to really create long-term opportunities for students in the CMSD who are seniors, as well as take residents in the community and connect them to the type of educational and training needs in order to create the economic potential for them. Just a couple examples. Tri-C, for example, offers courses in healthcare, logistics and distribution, as well as manufacturing. Now, many of our four-year colleges and universities do not offer that type of hands-on type of skill set. So our community colleges are going to be very critical in this. This is an example of advanced manufacturing and engineering, which is also something that's offered at Tri-C. Alternative energy and sustainable training. The Center for Health Industry Solutions is also another aspect of Tri-C's curriculum that can be leveraged through working with the city and workforce development efforts, and also the construction apprenticeship program. And also the result in development initiatives that promote sustainable land uses and healthy communities. we talk about the area that exists within the opportunity corridor. We think about areas like the urban ag zone. How can we begin to leverage the production of food in that area and really start to leverage that and get into more of the distribution side of things and really provide opportunities for things like a green grocery store, et cetera. And also looking at green infrastructure as a key opportunity to take full advantage of vacant land and utilize land resources as a form of stormwater management, et cetera. And these are some of the examples of these types of interventions. We're working right now with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District and looking at an integrated stormwater management approach. From a city perspective, we're also looking at innovations around zoning. How do you regulate land to ensure that you get the type of development that you want to see in these areas? We are in the process of now passing legislation to establish the Opportunity Corridor Design Review District. This will give us the opportunity to govern design of buildings as they actually develop within the corridor area. And by doing so, this will really give us some discretion to influence the built form and other type of aesthetic treatments along the corridor route. This is the area outlined in yellow of that design review district, which actually covers all the parcels that flank the corridor. And one other thing I want to highlight is the fact that we are also looking at these north-south spines that come from the corridor into the neighborhood. East 105th Street is one of those areas, and we were awarded last year a Tiger grant for $494,000. This includes funding from the WACA as well as the federal government to actually study the corridor of 105th and East 93rd Street, linking up with Opportunity Corridor, again, a critical north-south connection route. And also looking at T intersections and how do we treat intersections to promote walkability, looking at the center and the edges of those communities and what's happening in a 5-minute walking radius of certain key intersections. Really trying to take typical intersections and really create the density, building up instead of out, focusing on tree canopy, as Matt alluded to, and really creating places in key areas along the corridor. Some of the design characteristics as far as landforms, and Matt alluded to plazas. These are all things we've been coordinating on. And also looking at the bridge characteristics, so we were very instrumental in working with the partnership as well as HNTB and ODOT on identifying opportunities for the bridge design that you saw. And then also I wanted to just reiterate the fact that when we talk about bicycle and pedestrian amenities, and this map also shows bike score, and you can see communities that are considered to be more bikeable and less bikeable in this area around the corridor area is a less bikeable area that does not have connections. And the slide that Matt showed you earlier really provides sort of what the intention is. And the previous map shows what the evidence is as far as trying to provide those amenities in this neighborhood. And this shows the Housing Transportation Affordability Index. And this map outlines the journeys to work by transit. So you can see in the light blue and the dark blue, many of these people are transit dependent for those who actually do work. Could this corridor actually improve their trip and enhance their transportation options? We are also looking at transit-oriented development, particularly at East 55th and East 79th Street. And lastly, the planning process was extremely critical in this. And much of what the neighborhood talked about during this process was the beautification of the neighborhood, street improvements, repurposing vacant parcels, public safety, enhance access to public transit, jobs and employment opportunities, as well as economic development. So for us, in a nutshell, this is sort of what has driven sort of the city's of Cleveland's investment in time and energy into the corridor. So I'm going to turn it over to the MC, and he is going to turn it over to Marie. Thank you.
All right, last but certainly not least, I'm going to introduce the Opportunity Corridor Project Director, Marie Kittredge. Marie, I would just ask you to keep your comments brief. Freddie took some of your time, so.
Thank you. And as I'm batting cleanup, I said I would cut my remarks short, so thanks, Freddie. I don't have to talk that much. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the role of the Opportunity Corridor Partnership Office is and the key stakeholders' roles and responsibilities, and then I'm going to drill down a little bit on the work of the partnership just for a moment and talk about some of our key projects. Is this laptop? Okay. All right, that's going to require me to juggle like this. Okay. So who's in charge? Well, the answer is a lot of people, and that's good for the community. The steering committee, the Opportunity Corridor Partnership Office, works on behalf of the steering committee, which includes about 35 or so institutions, public sector, private sector, residents sit directly on the committee, in addition to being represented by the Community Development Corporation leadership and the City Council. There is also, so they're kind of oversee the broad chunk of the work, and this is the development around the road. This is not the construction of the road itself. That is the city is the one who makes those planning and design decisions in addition, in consultation with ODOT. So they're the ones who are working directly on the road. My partnership office work is for the development around the road. And the steering committee has 2 or 3 major committees that work directly, report directly to the committee. There's a neighborhood development subcommittee, which is most of the neighborhood representation. And then there is the workforce group. And any conversation, you heard Freddie talk a lot about workforce, any conversation that we have about the corridor goes right to jobs. And that is why it's such an important piece of what we do. ODOT has a major component of that work, which Freddie reported on, that is funded through the road, resulting in the 91 placements to date. So in addition to the steering committee, the CDCs, the Community Development Corporations, have responsibility for their own geography, for their service areas where they work directly, and the corridor passes through the 5 CDCs there that are listed. The city itself has responsibility for the development decisions around the road, and those are come in a number of ways, including not only city planning, but economic development, Office of Equal Opportunity that negotiates through on the community benefit agreements and inclusion efforts. In addition, then there are other people who have responsibility, other entities, which include the foundations. They include specific offices and committees that have particular roles and particular pieces. For instance, the Sewer District's External Advisory Committee that helps inform how the green infrastructure, for instance, might be deployed. Okay, that's the big picture. That's who's weighing in on various aspects of the corridor. And again, part of our job is to try to coordinate that to the absolute best, most efficient, effective way possible and to align all the pieces, parts. Within the partnership office, and I'll recognize Adrian Johnson, my colleague here, whose major responsibility is communication and outreach. These are the 4 functions that kind of the buckets that the work falls under. So we have the partnership office has a major responsibility to do communication and outreach. That's one of the reasons we're here today, to be able to get the word out to a variety of target markets about what exactly is happening, and then to make sure that the community is engaged directly and has some direct role in the decision-making through all of our partners, and then to build consensus on where we're going to go and what we're going to do with many of these pieces. Workforce development, again, a huge chunk of work. The partnership office is not the lead here. We're partnering with our friends at Ohio Means Jobs and Urban League and Towards Employment and Fairfax Connection and many other agencies that are and service providers who are working on that issue. Urban design and planning, that's a city function, and Freddie talked about that. Site assembly, again, we are partnering with the city, Fund for Economic Future. The CDCs are very involved, figuring out how are we going to fund site assembly, how are we going to bring those sites together, how are we going to get them cleaned up. The state's going to play a role, we hope, in remediation, so that's an important piece that's in process. And the site assembly is not just for economic development, although that's a very important chunk of it. It's also for that implementing those plans. Okay, just quickly, you've seen a lot of maps, but I wanted to make sure you kind of highlighted out where the particular neighborhoods were. So we have Central and Kinsman are serviced by Burton Bell Carr Community Development Corporation, Hyacinth neighborhood or North Broadway, Fairfax, Woodland, and University. Quickly, we didn't really mention this, transit connectivity is one of our big competitive advantages, and that's, as Joe Calabrese says, Opportunity Corridor is a game changer, so this is what we're building off of when we talk about economic development. These are the plans that I'll skip that slide, we're in a hurry. So the plans that Freddie mentioned are being linked together so that we can highlight each of these unique neighborhoods and their history. So the African American history in at Karamu House, the urban ag zone in Kinsman, excuse me. And this is again, I'm dashing through here, but you have the urban ag zone, you have this Burton Bell Carr, who was really on the leading edge of how do we deal with all of our vacant land, how do we use it effectively, and their work on bringing agriculture to that kind of disinvestment in the Forgotten Triangle was critical. Sewer District added on to that, and Freddie talked about this briefly. So this is the kind of development, this is what's happening right now. Actually, it's under construction, layering on the urban ag zones, which is right, stuck. Okay, I think I'm done. Let me, actually, I'm not done. Sorry. Let me just end with this. And I was talking about the urban ag zone because that's a major development strategy to bring in food processing and packaging, and there's a lot to build on there. But here's the core question. Here's the core question for all of us who are working on the project, and that is opportunity for who? Residents are worried, and we've heard from them. The whole team has heard from them. You know, they're worried they're going to be shut out of decision making. They're worried that this project is going to make their neighbor themselves or their neighbors worse off. That they're going to be left out of the economic gains, and that it's going to negatively impact Cleveland. And so our responsibility is to answer those questions and answer them up front, and that's why I want to make sure I didn't leave without mentioning that. That's why the jobs are important, that's why the design is important, and that's why we're here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie. I'd ask the panelists to join me up here on the stage. I've been a little lonely, so I appreciate that. So this is the portion when we actually transition to our question and answer piece of the City Club event. I think this is the piece that everyone gets excited about when they come to the City Club, and I've noticed a number of you taking notes and jotting down questions, so we'd appreciate that. But we have a little bit of a unique setup today, so if you could hold on to those questions. We actually have 3 individuals who are going to have direct questions to the panel first, and then we'll open it up. Okay, we'll open it up to the larger audience shortly after that. So if you can bear with us for a second while they mic up everybody, I'd appreciate that. Yeah. All right, as I said, we're going to start with questions from 2 individuals, actually, who we specifically asked to represent the community concerns. We're going to start off with Terry Schwartz of the Kent State Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative. Terry?
Thank you. Thank you. I only have one question, and it's the same question that I always ask when public dollars are being spent, which is, how can we make this better?
I mean, all of this rhetoric around it being a pedestrian-friendly, multimodal corridor, it doesn't align with what we're seeing in the images. This is a big, wide road, right? And if you squint, you can see how it's going to play out on the ground. It's roads first. I mean, it's cars first. And the pedestrians, the bicyclists, and the transit riders, they're accommodated for sure, but they're not prioritized. And I keep hearing that the road is the road, right? And that's what we're going to get. But the second phase and the third phase, they're not built yet. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to make it better. And I'm specifically thinking about the intersections. Because design guidelines and zoning are going to be great, Fred, and really important. But the thing that's going to dictate the development along the corridor is the road itself, you know? And 55th Street and Opportunity Corridor is not even an intersection, it's an interchange. I mean, when you look at it, that's what it is. East 79th Street and Opportunity Corridor, critically important intersection. It should be a place where transit riders, bicyclists, pedestrians, it should be a hub of activity. And if you look at the drawings and if you look at the digital model, it really puts the car front and center and everything else kind of off at the edges. So I'm just wondering at this point, especially for the later phases of the work, what is it that we can do to make this road better so that what we get is what we actually think we're getting?
Myron, I'll have you answer that one first.
Yeah, appreciate that, that question. As we were developing the project from the beginning, it was all about multimodalism, and I believe we did a good job working together with the community to incorporate a great bike path. We even modified that later on, working with the community to separate the pedestrians and the bicyclists. There's also a enhanced bus shelters. We're working with the community to identify what can we do with the bus shelters to make those better. And fortunately, we're along a transit facility through here that we have connections to the transit areas, and we're also applying dollars to rebuilding a platform at the Quincy station. So I think we have, and we've been very sensitive from the beginning to make this a multimodal transportation system, and I think we've done a great job working together to come up with meeting all those modes.
So if I may respond, and I'm going to respond candidly, because what I think I'm hearing is the fact that it doesn't go far enough. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be really honest, it may not go far enough. But at the end of the day, when we think about what was proposed in this corridor originally, if you go back 15 years, the culture has changed. And I think there's been a lot of advocacy with that of the city, with that of the community and others that has pushed the envelope to a degree where there are enhancements that really improve the connectivity and potential of this corridor. Could there be more? Probably. But the question is, we're at a critical juncture. Here we are. And when you look at the things like the bicycle amenities, things like the landscape median that's been included, the city is working very diligently around utility connections, because how can you have a opportunity corridor if you don't have the proper utility connections that create the economic development opportunity? These were all advocacy points by the city of Cleveland. So to answer the question directly, we're fighting against a culture that has existed prior to many of us, and a philosophy of investment that has been really about road construction. And I think the work that we've done here locally in changing that culture, and I would actually like to actually thank Myron for being a part of individual in his agency beating that drum of changing how we need to do road infrastructure in the state of Ohio. So it's a philosophical, I'm gonna hold it. It's a philosophical shift that's happening, and Mrs. Swartz is an advocate, and she is a part of a larger advocacy group. Some of those folks actually work for the institutions that have been thinking in a certain way for many years. But I see that culture changing, and I see that this roadway has improved considerably to what it was originally conceived as.
So before we get to our second question, just to follow up to what Freddie said, but this question's for you, Myron. If the project has advanced in the last 15 years, that it's come from a primarily auto-oriented road to more of a multimodal, shouldn't we be thinking further into the future? If in 15 years we've made a change, this road construction is a 50-year decision. So shouldn't we be thinking even farther ahead to see the trends of automobile usage is down? Should we be thinking about how do we prioritize other modes of transportation over the car because the trend is changing?
And Jason, yeah, and that's, I still believe this project from the beginning has been a multimodal transportation system. It's just not a road. It never has been. From the beginning, from all the public meetings, from all the community input that we've gotten, we've always made it a point that this is going to be a system that's going to include pedestrians, it's going to include bicycle, it's going to include transit. We said that from the beginning, and it still is, and that's how it evolved from day one to where we're at today. And I truly believe we came to this system that we're building. This is just not a roadway. There is multimodalism built into it right now.
Our second question, we have Jennifer Coleman. She's the chair of the city's Landmark Commission and also an alternate on the City Planning Commission.
Hi, I almost wish that this presentation was completely reversed and we started off with talking about planning and what it means for the community, the people who are using it, and then we talk about roads. I almost want to challenge the conversation not to use the word road because we have, clearly the road is what has been priority in getting funding for it and getting the construction. But this is ultimately to live up to its promise, a people project. And the planning, it's great to hear the developments, some of them that have been there all along, about how this will touch and impact the people who live there and the people who work there. But really that needs to be, I think this speaks to many points that have been made and will be made about how is this going to affect the person who lives there now, the person who owns jobs, really seriously day to day. We've got bikes. Who's going to use the bikes? Where are they going? It's great that we have a trail, but how literally do we understand who the people are who are going to be? And is, even though it's going to be very nice looking and new and pretty, are they going to use it? And are we fitting their needs to do that? Because that is a very special. Biking has a different concept in this area than it does, say, maybe in Ohio City and other areas of the community. So I think we need to be very, very granular on how we look at how this goes. We talk about transit, and that is so tightly tied with education. And the fact that you have the red line, which will bring people from the near west side, for the west side, how are we treating education and training in this area? Because clearly we're not going to build or have a community college midtown or opportunity corridor area, but how are we training people? We've got a population of single parent households. Daycare is very important. So how are these issues, how are we literally changing, transforming people at the core of their existence? Placemaking is a big word, kind of a buzzword right now in the planning committee, but really we are making a place, and that involves people. So again, I think it's time to let the transportation issues, they're on a pathway now. And I think we have to bring to the forefront absolutely every conversation we start off with people and not the road.
So I think, just to phrase that into a question directly to the panel, no, and I'm not mocking you at all, but it's, when I looked through the presentation at the beginning, before the event, a lot of the things that Freddie, you talked about, and Marie touched on a little bit, were things that probably should be happening anyways, regardless of this construction of a road. Sorry, Jennifer. So how are these things going to be done in the neighborhoods, not just in the opportunity corridor, but the neighborhoods that directly touch the corridor that we were talking about? How are those planning efforts going to happen? How are they have been happening prior to, and then this construction should just be the icing on the cake to the plan that's already existing?
will speak to that briefly and a little bit about the question of kind of why are we starting with the road. And from my time at Slavic Village, and living in Slavic Village for many, many years, there's many, planning and development doesn't go in a nice, well-organized line. We enter the process in all sorts of different ways as all sorts of different things happen, whether it's a foreclosure crisis that we have to figure out how to turn into potential for the neighborhood, or a great development that someone wants to invest in, or a new bike trail, or a new rapid station, or whatever that might be. In this case, the road was where we started, and that's that decision has already been made through a very long process, as we mentioned. So I think it's just that's our responsibility is to catch up and is to really get to the granular level. And I think those granular design decisions is why we're talking about design today, is what we have to be thinking about right now. The plans have been in place. The strategic plans for the neighborhoods were already in place, and we're building off of those, and that's the good news. But that granularity of what do you do, the red line that takes you right to Tri-C, and so you don't need a new Tri-C, but how does it feel? How do you get there from the neighborhood, from the housing developments that are nearby? That's where we need to really focus, and particularly on that 79th intersection.
Just to kind of add to that, when you think about the neighborhood investments that are happening currently, are happening regardless of the roadway. So to your point, you're absolutely right, and that's been our posture from the beginning. A lot of the neighborhood plans that have been done despite the roadway. It did not necessarily include consideration of the roadway, to be quite honest with you. If you were to talk to Tim Tramble and the work around their service area, you think about CMHA's reinvestment, you think about Cornucopia Place, you think about the activity that's happening along Kinsman, that did not consider the roadway, but these are investments that are taking place in that vicinity. In one of the slides, what I attempted to really show is the importance of reestablishing value. The corridor is one of many land uses in that area. It just happens to be $331 million, which is considerable. And I think that we can't ignore that connectivity and the need to make those connections and try to leverage that roadway. When you think about this area many years ago, was an area that had a lot of economic value. And the idea of really looking at that core zone and really trying to infuse jobs back into the mix is really what's going to make the community whole. So this boxing in of the conversation around the roadway, and the three of us sit here as not necessarily planners and advocates of a piece of infrastructure, but community development advocates. And the work that's been going on, whether it's capital improvements, private investments that are in and around this vicinity, is only adding to the mix of things that need to happen around this zone. We just happen to be talking about a $331 million investment that just got announced last year. And a lot of interest has happened since that announcement. But people like myself and others, CDCs, Marie in her former role, has been grinding in neighborhoods for years. So.
Okay, so now we're going to open up to audience questions from the audience. There are two individuals with microphones. We have Jessica and Teddy, so just raise your hand if you have a question, and they'll start with you. Jessica.
Hi, Councilman Tony Brancatelli, City of Cleveland. So maybe we need to look to the future a little bit and get Doc Brown out here and back to the future where we don't need roads, but we certainly saw that in other neighborhoods like Parma and other places where now they're looking at how they redesign. So part of the question is, Director Collier talked earlier about bikes, and you put a screen up really quickly around bike lanes. Can you really talk about how the bike lanes, and I know Dr. Coleman talked about, I gave her a promotion, Dr. Coleman talked about really how do these bike lanes integrate within the plan, and how do they integrate within the neighborhoods, and how much value will they add?
Right. So, the bike situation, when this was first brought to us at the city, bike accommodations were not always a part of the conversation. So it went from a bike path and through dialogue with the community, a more enhanced scenario where you have both bike and pedestrian amenities that are in a shared scenario. There was a proposal by Bike Cleveland recently where you had a midway concept where you would actually have the bike lanes in the roadway. The challenge with that, besides it not being feasible given the time that it was proposed, the fact is that if you want more ridership, you have to create a safe scenario. That concept was for the more advanced rider. We're talking about a community where we want to introduce and create the choice for people to participate in cycling and mature them into that. We're looking at protected bike facilities from a citywide perspective through a NOACA grant that's going to be announced next week that we're going to receive, and we're going to go to work on looking at protected bike facilities. So the city has always been very favorable to multimodal forms of transportation, particularly as it relates to bicycles. As it relates specifically to the corridor and the bike amenities there, what you saw in that image was what's going to happen on the second phase of the corridor. The first phase will have bicycle amenities, but the shared pedestrian and bicycle path will happen on that second phase because that's where you're going to have the room and the ability to accommodate that. So again, and I just want to stress this idea of culture change. People are maturing in their understanding, and as people mature in their understanding, better decisions are being made. So when I look at this project, I'm looking at it with the attitude of optimism. How do we make $331 million work? Not about what it should have been, could have been, and who missed what, and that's not important right now. What's important right now is how do we push the envelope as far as we can to get the best possible product in this scenario and continue to mature in our understanding of sustainability, multimodal transportation, community health, community benefit. We're on a positive trajectory, I think, in this city. I think that one thing that we need to emphasize, and I said it in the first slide, is this issue of equity. How do we make sure that we're inclusive when we talk about making these decisions and making sure that we're responding to the people who are inherently disadvantaged? And that goes to Ms. Coleman's point about bicycle and pedestrian amenities. If you're going to change the culture, it won't be by just putting this in the roadway in the neighborhood, but it's going to be doing things with council people, for example, like educating people about bike safety, getting kids bikes, changing the programmatic culture of things so that people can become more used to riding bikes, and it becomes part of the culture. So there's more at stake here. We just happen to be talking about a very straightforward, practical thing, and that's $331 million being invested in a piece of infrastructure. But there's a broader context here, and that's important.
And I'll just get real specific. So the protected bike lane that includes the adjacent sidewalk will go from East 55th all the way up to Quincy. And then there will be, from Quincy to Euclid, will be an off-road 10-foot multi-purpose path, the way it's currently designed. So that means you can ride your bike off-road from 55th, 3 miles up to Euclid and 105th, essentially. Freddie and City Planning just got a grant to do, well, hopefully we'll be getting a grant any minute now, right, to do design on East 79th. East 79th has 2 rapid stations. Take a assuming there's going to be bike lanes, right, Freddie, on 79th. So 79th from those rapid stations all the way down to the Morgana Run Trail, near and dear to our heart in Slavic Village. Morgana Run Trail connects to on 79th and connect to Fleet. Fleet will have new bike lanes, and you can go right to the towpath and all the way to Akron if you want to. So that image in 2020 is that you can ride your bike from 105th and Euclid, off-road, a few bike lanes on 79th, down to Akron. We'll ride together.
All right. Thank you, Marie. Question over here.
Thank you all so much for your time. I had a question about the East 79th Rapid Station. We've heard so far that it's going to remain open. That said, it has to be upgraded on the order of about $17 million for ADA access. And I was curious if that is going to be entirely a responsibility of RTA, or if ODOT is going to be, I mean, this is a station that was said, it was, part of the study was said this is going to have multimodal access, and I was wondering what ODOT's responsibility is going to be in making sure they're also funding part of that upgrade rather than this being kind of solely on the RTA.
Yeah, in regards to the East 79th Street station, that is not included as part of this corridor project. That's a separate run project that the RTA is leading. So there's nothing in our current project that's included with that upgrade of that station.
Thank you, Myron. Sorry.
Good afternoon. What does the Fund for Economic Future have to do with this project?
I'll answer that. Yeah. Thank you for that question. We're really focusing today on the overview of the road and design, but the fund has recently been willing to step forward and partner on a key part of the economic development strategy, which is the economic growth. How are we going to get the right businesses in the right places on the road? And that's a little bit of a design question, but really a question about what is a competitive advantage, what are the kind of jobs that we want to emphasize, and what's going to be the process that we undertake to bring those jobs, those businesses to Cleveland. So the fund has is spearheading an effort and providing a grant to, which is now under request for qualifications are out, to bring a consultant who will help us answer that question. And they're also supporting the partnership office. So I'm glad to have that and hope we have many more years of collaboration. Get this done.
Hi, David Jerka from the Kent State Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative. It's my understanding that the Phelan Corridor was used as one of the case studies for this corridor project, which, for those of you that might not know, it's a project in St. Paul, Minnesota. I believe started like 1995. And it's a corridor project, multiple lanes. That also includes green infrastructure projects adjacent to it as assets and incentive for development surrounding it, bike lanes, a lot of the things that we're hearing right now. That project was opened in 2005. So now it's 10 years later. We have a lot to learn. We saw that project. We're innovative folks. So my question is, what's more innovative about this project than the Phelan Corridor? What have we learned since then? What are we applying to this project to make ours a better, more innovative project that we can be proud of?
I'll take that one because I actually visited Phelan Corridor this fall. It's a great project, significant investment. It cleaned up brownfields like we're talking about. I have to say that this is actually to Terry and Jennifer's point, that design was not in the forefront of that project. I don't know if you've seen it, but the development kind of turns its back on the road, and I think that's a weakness. It also is kind of stark, so the tree canopy, and this is, I think, the partly the work of the city as well, and that what they talked about, what kind of trees do you want? Well, they said, we want trees that are big enough to create a canopy rather than the kind of short, cherry tree or whatever those little things are. Crab trees. And partly that's because the utilities are being buried, so that enables that. So I think my great takeaway is design. It doesn't feel really walkable or friendly, and we can do better. But I love you guys in St. Paul.
Myron, do you want to talk a little bit about the design of the physical road, though?
We presented the physical road in our presentation, but I'm not familiar with the Minnesota project or looked into it or studied. I know this project here will be transformational for our community, for this area, and it's going to be a lot better in the future than we have now. This is, as was been referenced in in presentations, this is the Forgotten Triangle. We're now providing access to this area, and this whole project is about making things better for our community.
Okay. We got a question in the back.
Rick Howard, I'm a business owner. I spoke with Maria Kitcher about a few months ago on the Mansfield Fraser show, and I was asking about the businesses, and I read several places they had money, but where do we go? You had sent me to John Hopkins up here at Buckeye Community Development, and he's been putting me off. The other day I read some bad press about him.
So I think the question is, and he represents a number of business owners in the Opportunity Corridor.
Yeah.
Right.
They said it was money set aside. The governor had said so much was allocated. I just want to know, where do we go?
Right.
Let me take it. Thank you, Mr. Howard. Appreciate you coming in, and please stick around so I can talk to you afterwards. There is, within the city, there are a number of separate, but maybe not as connected as we should have them, initiatives to support entrepreneurship in the minority community. And I can talk to you a little bit further about that. The particular set aside for the road, actual road construction, is something that's under ODOT.
Yeah, in regards, appreciate the question. We're real proud that this first phase, the $21 million construction project, 20% of that was required by the prime contractors to go towards disadvantaged businesses, and that is historic. In my 25 years at ODOT, that has never happened at that level. The Interbelt Bridge itself, construction was 15% of that went to DBEs, disadvantaged businesses. The Opportunity Corridor Phase 1, 20% of it. And the contractor, which is a joint venture of Perkin McTech, which is disadvantaged business themselves, are the prime contractors. They're meeting all the requirements for 20% of that work to go to minority businesses. And that is the highest ever on an ODOT project.
Myron, you want to mention what kind of work that is?
It's a variety of work. The contractor determines what heavy highway type work that's out there and where they're going to be putting their DBE requirements on. So the contractor will be utilizing disadvantaged businesses in a variety of services that's part of heavy highway work.
Okay. So just for clarification, the funds that the governor spoke of that are set aside for this project are dedicated to the road construction, not necessarily an existing business in a corridor that needs some funds to expand or.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. You got a question in front of you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Reverend Pamela Pinckney Butts, and I'm a preacher, which is I'm a fivefold minister preacher, and I am also into this political world. I entered into the presidential race for 2016 for the United States of America, and I'm also a business owner. And there has been a great falling away of the faith, and people have become disgruntled and discouraged with the epidemic of violences and other things that are taking place. And I actually written something down to say to you all this evening, but this is not the proper platform for it, but I will give it to you. I would like to know if you will welcome who I am and what I do into your planning process as not only the political arena, but as a preacher, because the church has lost its place and the light has gone out. And I ask if you would welcome me so that we can restore people back to hope through the faith community.
Well, I think one of the roles of the church is bringing people together as a community, and I think that's something that strongly needs to happen here throughout the Corridor Project because there's plenty of areas for citizen input, and I think Marie and Freddie and even Myron's team would welcome that citizen input as well. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Right there, Jessica.
Hi, Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity. It seems from a cycling standpoint, we're either too early or too late, but never on time. And I really think that we can have the same consistent message throughout, and we will be accused of being either too early or too late. I wonder if there are still opportunities in which we can do things that might make this a little bit more of an hospitable place for pedestrians and cyclists. You get what you build, and for instance, even last week, or earlier this week, I'm sorry, there was the death of a 14-year-old run over a hit-and-run accident. I'm not going to use the word accident, hit-and-run collision involving a car on Carnegie. And with wide lanes, you encourage speeding. You risk creating a racetrack that it would exclude the pedestrians and cyclists. And I wonder if there's yet still that opportunity to create a welcoming environment there.
Sure. So just to summarize that, as a thought that I kind of had in my head, Myron, when you were talking about the multimodal aspect of the corridor, how do you sort of prioritize or at least even the balance out so that it is a welcoming experience for pedestrians and cyclists as well as the automobile?
I think as we presented and as shown, this project will have a multimodal approach. There will be as Freddy and Marie stated, in sections 2 and 3 from East 55th Street all the way up to Quincy, that's going to be a separated bike facility, including separated from the roadway and separated from the pedestrians. So we have incorporated the bicyclist and bicycling community from the beginning throughout the entire corridor. So yeah, that is important. The pedestrian aspects, the multimodalism, the connectivity, that was part of our overall frame of mind when we started planning this project and designing it to get it to construction. And we're very proud to work with the bike community, work with the city, work with the neighborhoods to present the facility that is a multimodal driven facility.
Right.
Yeah, if I may just get a little bit more specific as to how you can enhance that experience even more. You know, I'm sorry, man. As to how you can enhance that experience even more. I mean, when you think about the intersections, things like crosswalks, timed pedestrian signalization that has the countdown. I mean, things like that are really helping people to navigate the corridor. The fact is that the median itself also helps that, so that you're not just kind of crossing a pavement, but you have a median that breaks the corridor up. And then those T intersections are really, really important. You know, I think that to the degree that we were able to influence that over time and add the aesthetic as well as the bicycle and pedestrian amenities, it gets us closer to that. Is it absolutely the hallmark of what multimodal transportation is? No, but I think we've moved in a very good direction to get it to a point where it is not a pedestrian hazard per se, and it does accommodate the pedestrian. Even when you look at the pedestrian bridge that's provided from the actual RTA station. So there's enhancements that have been made that I think gets us closer to ultimately where we want to be, and not just with Opportunity Corridor, with other streets in the city of Cleveland.
Thanks, Freddie. I think we have time for one last question.
Hi guys, Jason Minter, Burton Bell Car Development. I guess my question is for Myron, and I've been trying to get your point of view on this project. A lot of the questions asking directly about the road itself, it seems like you're saying, oh, the road is about the community and its connections to the community outside, and all the questions about the community adjacent, RTA or whatever, what have you, about walkability. You say, oh no, this is a road project. We're not thinking about the outside community. So in any project, any built project that goes on around here, I think it's appropriate for the community to ask what's in it for them. What are the community benefits? So I'm curious, just of the $331 million that is invested, what portion of that is, let me back up one step. The community, as Freddie had said, has identified community benefits as economic development. as what it takes to make businesses grow, stay, or be attracted to the area around Opportunity Corridor. So with that definition of community benefits, what type of investment of the $331 million, what portion of that is going towards those causes? And if none, or if some little amount is going towards that, what is ODOT doing to support the community that they say that in their mission statement about this project they're interested in?
And I think thank you for that question, and I do, as we've talked throughout, feel this project is not just a roadway project. It is a community multimodal project that we feel we worked with the community to help develop. As Matt presented, there's a variety of community benefits that we were incorporating and enhancing into this facility of this corridor, the infrastructure that we're building. The $331 million includes everything involved with it, from the engineering of the roadway to the purchasing of properties to the community benefits and enhancements, including the pedestrian walkways over the roadway. There's going to be also visual enhancements to the roadway. There's going to be a lot of aesthetics incorporated to the corridor. We're adding $500,000 to the Ken Johnson Rec Center development plan because we're touching the Ken Johnson Rec Center. There was also a variety of benefits that we've incorporated. I don't know if either Marie or Freddie, or if I could maybe defer to Matt to maybe explain those again quickly here. I know we're trying to run out of time.
And Myron, I think you covered a lot of them. There is a $500,000 commitment toward the expansion of the Ken Johnson Rec Center, as Myron mentioned. There was a $500,000 commitment toward the job training program that ODOT's administering, and a lot of those numbers that you saw that Freddie mentioned. There's a number of other
Quincy Station.
There's a $3 million investment to expand the RTA station that's currently on Quincy. The platform is going to be extended under 105th Street, a second elevator and stairwell added on the east side of 105th Street. There's some resurfacing of some of the local roads in the community that have been added to the project. The street trees, the enhancements, the other items that Myron mentioned, and as well as one of the items that we heard about from the public about security. It was also brought up by a councilman. There are security cameras that are going to be added to the intersections along the corridor, trying to enhance that as well. So a number of things, and a lot of these were added through this public process. I would just add.
Well, I want to thank everyone for their time. As we've reached the end of our program, I want to thank our panelists, Myron from ODOT, Marie from the Opportunity Corridor Project, and then Freddy Collier, the Planning Director for the City of Cleveland. I also want to thank our first questioners, Jennifer Coleman and Terry Schwartz, and of course all of you, friends of the City Club. Our forum is adjourned. Thank you.